to another edition of the Omnist Hour. Turn that background music down a little bit. You may recognize the strains of Rossini's Thieving Magpie. That's the first piece that came to mind with today's topic. The background art is what Night Cafe made of my idea of, let's see, what's the prompt I gave it? Noah's Ark meets Jonah and the whale and a giant sea serpent. These are the 4 renditions it gave me of that in sort of a Candyland fantasy mode of thinking. Where are we going today? I'll give you the title of what we're going to talk about. This is one I've had on the back burner for a while, and something always gets in the way. And I decided to do it because it kind of ties into the last talk we had about Egypt. And we'll get back to where it ties in when we talk about therianthropes. I'm going to title this one of Arks and Grails, Snakes and Snails, Jonahs and Whales, and Good Fairy Tales. Okay, let's start with the title. It's a good place to start. Arks and Grails. What are arks? Well, there's 2 main associations that come to mind when we think of the word ark. There's one that comes from the Ark of the Covenant of biblical fame. And there's another association that calls to mind Noah's Ark, another piece of biblical lore. What is an ark? Now, the Grail is a similar concept in a way, because arks and grails are containers of things. A grail was supposedly the container of a capture of Christ's blood bleeding on the cross that was said to have magical properties. Was taken by Joseph of Arimathea and is kind of the root mythological story behind the Catholic obsession with relics. Saints' relics and stuff. A piece of the true cross is another popular relic, and for ages folks have been looking for this grail that had Christ's blood in it. Those of you who are Monty Python fans will remember how this was made fun of in Life of Brian, with all of the nonsense about the sandal, so forth. So anyway, they're kind of 2 very, very common concepts, and I'm going to explain where they come from and what they have in common. Basically, as I've told you before, all of creation is basically the evolution of 2 systems of existence. One is physical existence, which guides, kind of like, well, it sort of defines the Candyland fantasy that we get to participate in physical incarnation, and a system of spiritual incarnation, which is an even more Candyland fantasy of what we experience in the afterlife between physical incarnations. And those systems each have their own rules of development. Physical universes are only different really from spiritual universes in that they follow the pattern, if you will, of God's first child, Lucifer, who's not Satan, who's not a super bad guy, has had some really bad incarnations, don't get me wrong. Every soul has a bad day once in a while. And some of Lucifer's incarnations were pretty dark. But Lucifer's overall task in creation is testing. And his universe, the primary universe, physical universe, the prime physical universe, is where souls are tested. New and old, young and old. Why do they need to be tested? Well, as I've told you, every soul is a quanta of consciousness. Every quanta of consciousness is essentially an accumulation of their experience. A newborn soul has no experience and therefore no consciousness. And souls are newborn because they need to fill a hole somewhere in the multiverse where a soul is needed, but there aren't any volunteers that consciously want to take that job. So the vast majority of things in the multiverse are inhabited by these newborn NPC souls, non-player character souls, who have no real consciousness. They're basically pure AI. They're given a program, they're given a form, role to play, and unless that role is challenged with decisions that are outside their programming, they will just keep executing the program and following their instructions and have some variability of behavior like an AI. An AI has a probabilistic chance of doing one thing or another based upon the soul it was cloned from. And that's what the Borg, the adversary of creation, was created for, is to generate NPCs. It's like a big video game. If you've played a massive multiplayer video game, you know that NPCs can be friendly, or they can be bad guys, or they can just be window dressing. And if you've played a lot of these games, you know you'll remember you've seen all three. They're not necessarily good or bad. They're just programmed entities of relatively low consciousness. They know what they're supposed to do, how they're supposed to interact with others, the player characters, the active characters, and depending on what sort of active character you are, they might be an adversary, they might be a friend. Many of the more advanced role-playing games, massively multiplayer role-playing games, you can play sort of on the good guy team, the bad guy team, or even on multiple teams that each have their own ethos, their own mythology of religion, ideology, etc., etc. This again is, as I mentioned many times, a proof that we're nearing the end of this experiment, because humans are creating systems that are exactly like God created to make the multiverse. We're doing baby steps, if you will, of what God envisioned billions of years ago when this whole experiment was started. Okay, so what's been going on is with arks and grails, they are containers. And that, from an incarnation standpoint, every vehicle you incarnate is the vehicle for your soul. Every separate thing in the physical universe is like a vehicle for a soul. Something like a boat is the incarnation of the idea of the person who designed the boat. So Noah's Ark would be a vessel that encompassed the idea that Noah was given to preserve the species. Now, did Noah really gather all the species on a boat and go floating around while this flood was going on? Maybe, but that's kind of silly. What actually happened is that the civilization that existed before the big flood, before roughly 12,800 years ago was quite advanced, as we talked about in the previous discussion about Egypt. This was a civilization that was very cosmopolitan, that was very connected with the galaxy around us. That's what those stargates were for. And this was a civilization that had many species, that had sort of carved out their own niche in the galaxy. And as I've mentioned before, some of those species had a very close tie to this star system and are represented by the constellations of the zodiac, or other very important constellations that are part of the lore and mythology of humanity. Many of those species were therianthropes, a combination of hominid genome and some other genome or genomes. This is where you get the stories of chimeras, nagas, dragons, centaurs, vampires, werewolves, etc., etc., etc. There are many of these species, and that's the reason that Egypt has the therianthrope gods. Other areas of the world also had therianthrope gods, but not as many as Egypt, because Egypt was where the last functioning stargate was. And that's where we need to go with how this whole thing works, is that technology is not constant. Scientists that say, oh, well, the law of, gravity, the law of the speed of light, etc., it's always been x, 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 x forever and ever, and it can't possibly be anything else. No, that's not the way it happened. Thought creates reality. Tested thoughts create laws. All of the laws of physics and chemistry were evolved, subject to change until enough energy was invested in a certain pattern to make that pattern really, really solid. So there are some things in chemistry and physics that have 100% probability. If you do this, you'll get this. There's other things where you have still multiple probabilities. If you do this, you might get a few muons here and some electrons there and a few photons, or you might get some other combination. Okay, that's what particle physics is all about. I spent some time doing particle physics, so I have a pretty good handle on what that is. I've counted muons and watched trails in bubble chambers. Okay, so this happens at all levels of soul vehicles. An elementary particle is just a very simple soul vehicle that doesn't have an underlying structure, other than we found that some of them have quarks, which, okay, the quarks can't be seen by themselves, but combinations of quarks are believed to be what generate all the different particles that we have been able to observe, either more directly or not. Oh, come on. Let's get this thing focused again. I don't know. It doesn't want to focus on me anymore. Bad camera. Let's see. Hang on. I know how to fix this. Let's get the Logitech app going and I will fix it. Never had this happen while I was doing a podcast. 1 week later. Okay. Autofocus off on. There we go. Okay. I don't want you to be going cross-eyed or something because I'm blurry. Yeah, so at all levels, you can kind of view reality as physical reality as a bunch of nested stacking dolls of vehicles for souls, arcs and grails. Okay, and those vehicles can be very solid, like a human. You think of yourself as a pretty well fixed thing. You have the same heart, you've got the same eyes, the same brain, the same everything. Actually, those cells are dying and being replaced all the time. So there's quite a bit of turnover in the corporation of your body that you're just not aware of. Why? Because that's the job of the subsouls in your body. And brain cells have their own replacement mechanism. Other cells have their replacement mechanism. Diseases attack those mechanisms because they want to destroy pieces of your organism. And there's constant battles going on within you that you're not aware of until it lands you in the hospital or in the morgue. These are spiritual battles, above all because they are battles between groups of souls. All of creation is a struggle. All of physical incarnation is a struggle, trying to stay alive long enough to do what you've been programmed to do, or if you are in a vehicle that has a fairly large latitude of, basically acting outside your programming, doing what you want to do. And that's what makes the human soul vehicle one of the more interesting ones in this phase of creation. It wasn't always that way. Back when Lucifer embodied the first physical universe, creation started with very small things like protons and neutrons and making stars and making new elements and throwing stars at each other and making galactic clusters and beautiful galaxies and stuff like that. Kind of Etch-a-Sketch or Pong level gaming. And some souls were kind of attracted to beauty and others were attracted to conflict. And that's okay. That's how creation happens. Creation has to have some kind of adversarial pressure to keep souls from getting lazy and just doing the same things over and over again, because there's no pressure to change, no pressure to try anything new, no criticism. All of these things serve a purpose, and that's why God created the adversary. The adversary is the Borg, the hive mind that generates all these non-player character souls that we struggle against. Okay? So, are you with me? Now, what's been going on this planet is the final phase of this, setting up this game. Because the whole idea was not just making a game that was fun and entertaining and made the game maker a lot of money or a lot of influence or friends, like the gaming industry works in this crazy world. No, the idea was ultimately to give souls the ability to sort themselves and govern themselves in the way that they wanted to. Now, if you think about it, the souls that like conflict, that like fighting, that like to have an enemy, are going to make enemies if they don't have ones. And that's a lot of the angst that we're facing in our species today, is we've got so many souls that just want to get on with what they're passionate about and try to make a living and make a family and just do the responsible thing in their society. And then you've got these other souls that have all these fancy dreams and want to make a bunch of money, want to conquer the world, etc., that make everything miserable for the rest of us. Now, that serves a purpose to an extent by putting pressure on us to not get too comfortable. But it's caused a lot of pain too. And the whole point of this system was to develop a multiverse so that through physical incarnation we could figure out what kind of soul you are, what you're passionate about, what your weaknesses are, what your strengths are, and sort you into spiritual universes where you will be happy, quote. And there are some souls that are so dark they're happy in hell. That's their nature. And that was the nature of God, not to want to just destroy anything that he didn't like, but to allow all souls to develop their own identity through free thought and free will, just like he did. And so rather than challenging anyone's religious beliefs, I'm actually giving you the truth that integrates all the beliefs, helps you to understand the real God, not this fairy tale character that's this almighty micromanaging best friend that supposedly supports only your religion. That's nonsense. That's childish nonsense. Fairy tale nonsense. Sorry. Now, where are we going with this? Well, arcs and grails, they also tie into, let's talk about the cycles of this planet. Let's go off to browser here. Now, if you know anything about our planet's history, you know we've had a number of major extinction events. There are two that were pretty well known and which are part of sort of the popular mythology of the planet. The Permian extinction is one, and the Triassic extinction. Many people may not be aware of the Permian extinction, but it was basically when all the trilobites and things like that died out. There was a lot more marine life diversity in the Permian era than there is now. The Triassic, the next dying, was the more famous Triassic-Jurassic extinction event that ended the dinosaurs' age. Okay, but it turns out there have been many other extinction events. And what's interesting is the fact that the recovery from these events, mapping the evolution of species after those recoveries, it leaves a lot of questions for people. And there are a lot of questionable discoveries that scientists don't want to talk about because they challenge the accepted view of our planet as having evolved through natural selection, the Darwinian model, which is very popular among atheists and materialist scientists who don't want to have a spiritual component, have to introduce a spiritual component to explain what's happening here, which is kind of stupid because you cannot think about thinking without understanding that there's something spiritual going on. You wouldn't be having a thought if you weren't a spiritual creature. Thoughts are not just the random process of, an undigested bit of beef. There is no explanation you can find for thoughts in chemical processes of the brain, because that's not where the thoughts are happening. The brain is a coprocessor. The real processor is your soul, your thought quanta, which is embodied within your body. The body is a filter. It's a coprocessor. It simplifies the multiverse and presents it in this simplified way that gives you more limited choices than you have if you're in an unlimited spiritual universe. That's the point of it, because that allows young souls to learn in an environment. It's like, would you take a newborn baby and lay it out in the middle of the street in New York City and expect it to grow up into a healthy adult? No, it's nonsense. You put them in a nursery with caretaker. You hopefully have one parent stay at home to nurture the child and to help it navigate the early years that are most formative. That's the human experience. Well, any other soul vehicle has a similar experience. So the Earth itself is kind of a soul vehicle. The Earth was created. It didn't just happen by happenstance. It was created out of the leftovers of a collision that happened to destroy the planet that used to be in the asteroid belt. An external interloper collided with that other planet, and some of the remnants formed the asteroid belt, and the other remnants gathered together eventually and formed this planet and our moon. And all the very odd and special geometric and cyclical relationships that have guided our civilization and actually are behind these extinction events. These are often very periodic. And in fact, we're discovering that the last pretty big extinction event was actually this Upper Dryas event, which was, people are thinking now it was another asteroid-related event, maybe not one that was landing, but maybe fragments of a previous collision that created a series of Tunguska explosions in the sky, which is like a nuclear explosion in many ways. I mean, it actually looks like it in the fossil record, in the geological record. And this caused the extinction of most of the larger species on the planet. All of the megafauna pretty much died out. The saber-toothed tigers, the dire wolves, the mastodons, etc., etc. And in fact, we're now coming to accept that there were giant humanoid species. There have been skeletons found and hid in the vaults of museums because nobody wants to talk about them, but they've been found, they've been documented. Back when they were originally found, there was a lot of documentation, and then it was hushed up. Why? Because folks wanted to hide our true history. Now, why would they want to do that? Well, why do secret societies exist? They want to hide secrets so they can benefit from them. And maybe because they feel like the mass of humanity isn't ready for those secrets. Okay, and that's been happening a lot in the last 2,000 years, especially because this event we've been in, this experiment we've been conducting that I call the Gaia experiment, is coming to a conclusion, a successful conclusion. Now, it's an experiment that involves both these physical vessels and the nature of the soul. But the real important thing is the soul's journey. The physical vessels that we inhabit are training wheels, what we learn from. And that's why, the human species may die out. Probably won't, because there's some other species somewhere that's going to be creating an ark. And this goes back to the ark concept. What was really going on is gathering DNA. Because if you have the DNA of a species and you have the right technology, you can rejuvenate that species. And if you know how to guide them culturally, you can recreate species that have gone extinct, even advanced species like the therianthropes. Now, what happened to these therianthropes? Well, they died out. Why? Because humanity was created, and one of the psyops that was used to basically destroy the Atlantean civilization, which was again this very cosmopolitan, starfaring civilization that used these stargates to get around the galaxy, to destroy it by basically the same mechanism that the adversary is using to try to destroy humanity now. Cult Marxism, making us think that we're oppressed and we need to kill our oppressors. And they convinced humanity that these therianthrope species were their oppressors. Well, in some cases they were, because some of the therianthropes did use mind control to manipulate and get the humans, different variety. You know, there were two phases of human creation. There was the Lemurian phase, where basically that was post the reptilian manipulation and control of the planet, which was kind of a dark phase. That sort of set humanity up to be suspicious of and hateful of therianthropes, especially reptilians. And then the second phase of creation that resulted in Homo sapiens and produced the Atlantean civilization that was pretty well wiped out by this event, Upper Dryas event, 12,800 years ago. It actually was a series of events, bang, 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 which kind of ties into the phrase I like to use about how the adversary works. Is they play whack-a-messiah. They want to wipe out more conscious souls who might be competition to them, because the Borg have accumulated all the knowledge of souls that gave up, became corrupted beyond repair, or decided they didn't want to play the game anymore. When you join the One, the Cosmic One, you are choosing to return to the Borg, return to the source. It's not this wonderful thing that people are telling you it is. It's basically throwing in the towel on your own individual game in the game of souls. Saying, you know what? I don't think what I'm doing is very good. I'm just going to be an NPC again. Fine, that's a choice you can make. If you make it consciously, I can understand. If you've really messed up and you just want to erase all your karma and start over, hey, that happens. Every soul has done that at one point or another. That's an individual great reset, if you will. And there are times where I could see that being justified. But if you're being manipulated and convinced to do that by a psyop, which the New Age movement is largely a series of psyops. This easy enlightenment, easy salvation, pay your guru $99.95 to get a new soul bullshit. This is bad karma. This is evil. This is karmic sin. This is tyranny. And it's got to stop. And it will stop, because, or the souls that fall for it will get assimilated And that's okay, because it doesn't really matter. God's team always wins in the end, because we have the most creative, independent, responsible, free will, open-minded souls always. That's why God's team isn't really worried. And the ones who are doing the most worrying are the ones that don't know who God is. If you think God is some almighty, micromanaging master of universes that's going to fight for you, I'm sorry. You're worshiping one of the Borg psyops, one of the dark gods of power that represent themselves with dark people of power. And I don't mean dark-skinned, I mean dark-souled people who put power above everything else. And you see this absolutely in spades with what's going on in the world situation right now. You've got people being activated by religious hate over the Israel-Palestine thing, and being given false flag narratives designed to basically get you activated either in tearing down the embassies of certain countries in your country, or performing terrorist acts in your country, or motivated to spend more money supporting war in places where it might not be in your country's best interest to be supporting a war, where it might be better if you just let the local powers work it out amongst themselves. If you guys want to keep fighting in the Middle East, knock yourselves out. Because that battle is never going to end as long as one or the other side is going to play the oppressed card, and the other ones, and you know, that now they're both playing it. Who's the good guy here? There's no good guys. The whole establishment of the state of Israel was a stupid idea, but it's an idea we're stuck with because it's been there for over 70 years. Just like the stupid idea of establishing the Chinese Communist Party as the rulers of mainland China, or the stupid idea of letting the USSR dominate Russia for so long and then turning it over to ex-KGB spooks like Putin, the oligarchs who control it now, who are in many ways worse than the Soviet Communist Party. They have all the weaknesses and none of the noble motives. Similar in the United States. The deep state is so freaking corrupt, so worthless. They suck money out of the taxpayer, they print money out of thin air, and then they use it to fund bullshit projects like doing gain-of-function research in a lab in China. A bioweapons lab that we know is being used to develop weapons to attack us. Now, how stupid is that? That's what the corporate world has been doing with China for decades, thinking that, oh boy, we're gonna fix all the problems we had with the Iran-Contra era, you know, when all the stuff came out with the Church Commission, and we're gonna go hide all that black ops research behind the Great Firewall in China, because the Chinese are so humble and they'll do anything we want for money. And well, you know what they've been doing? They've been preparing to destroy us. They've been stealing our technology and using it for dual use, building their military technology. Now, luckily, a lot of that has gone to waste because the Chinese Communist Party is corrupt as fuck. Everybody that gets ahead in the Chinese Communist Party gets ahead by kissing somebody's ass and doing dirty work that they don't want to have anything to do with. It's corrupt from top to bottom, and everybody in China knows that the only way to succeed in the long term is to get as much money as fast as you can and then try to get your money and your family out of China before you get whacked. Because they play this whack-a-messiah mole better than anybody else. Anybody that gets ahead, even a Jack Ma, can be whacked because he was too successful. It became a threat to Winnie the Pooh. Oh, this most sensitive Chinese people are the fucking assholes at the top of the CCP. I'm sorry. Pardon my French. I'm probably going to get a strike or something like that for saying so much truth, but it is truth. Okay, so what does that have to do with our topic? Arcs and grails, snakes and snails. Snakes evoke basically the reptilian aspect of our past. Snails evoke the nicer side of that. The things that crawl along the ground, they put up a shell to protect themselves from predators, and they try to get by, you know, not doing too much damage, not causing a lot of havoc. Kind of the opposite of a snake. And this is kind of like emphasizing the pattern of how you can behave in all of this. Okay, you can be a snake, you can be a snail. There are good reptilians. There are good souls in every species, in every nationality, in every group. They can do foolish things because if they're not well programmed, they will fall victim to propaganda narratives, and good souls can support tyranny, and that's part of what's going on worldwide right now. You've got people soaking up bad programming that they're getting from their smartphones and from social media, and being mobilized as useful idiots for the powers that want to destroy this species, or the powers that don't necessarily want to destroy it, but they want to build it back better. The Great Reset. They want to depopulate humanity. Humane depopulation. They talk about that in these circles. And that's what's behind creating viruses and vaccines that have deadly consequences. They can rationalize that by saying, well, they just had weak immune systems to begin with. A lot of viruses have been engineered. And I'm going to tell you that HIV, AIDS, was an engineered virus. It was one of the early ones back in an era where it was thought, you know, if we make a virus that targets homosexual men, probably nobody will take notice of it, and we can gather a lot of data and have a lot of plausible deniability before anybody really takes any note of what was going on. And in fact, some of the earlier commentaries on folks looking at the first edition of COVID made note of the fact that it seemed to have bits of the HIV virus in it. Part of that code was there. And this is the danger of splicing together viruses. This is bioweapons research. It is not for your health. It is to destroy the health of target populations. And absolutely every single country in the world that has advanced biological research is doing that. They are trying to create targeted weapons of mass destruction, mass depopulation, to fix their demographic problems, and perhaps to foster an environment where they can conquer the parts of the world that they want to conquer or dominate, either economically or militarily or both. It's happening. I'm not a conspiracy theorist. And it's very dark. When you start hearing about this, you start learning about it. It's so shocking and disturbing if you are a materialist person, if you don't have any understanding that, well, this is just one incarnation. This is an event we're going through, a process. You can get very, very disturbed by all this. And there are a lot of disturbed people that, basically they're afraid of their own shadow. These are the folks that, have an arsenal of weapons that they're going to hang on to come hell or high water. And, this feeds the beast. I'm not pro or anti-gun myself. I think, I've lived in less populous states and more populous states. And I think in more rural states, guns are absolutely needed to kill coyotes and stuff that are raiding your stock, or to protect your land because the nearest police or marshal is 40 miles away. Of course, that's like Wild West area, and there's places in the U.S. that are still like that. In the middle of a city, people walking around carrying guns is a pretty stupid idea, because people will get in situations where they will want to commit violence. And you can do a lot more violence with a gun, a lot more damage than you can with your fists. And we see that all the time with all of these nut jobs going crazy with guns and shooting up schools and shooting up malls and shooting up nightclubs and et cetera, et cetera. It's nonsense. You need to have reasonable laws, localized laws. You don't need to apply laws over an entire country, an entire world. That's stupid. That's not how God set up this business. It's all about localization. Every universe is localized. It's localized to support souls of a common identity. And there are spiritual universes, many of them for Christians, many of them for Muslims, many of them for people who have no religion but all share the desire to be a furry, maybe. That's become a popular identity now. There's probably a furry afterlife where you can go be furries for the rest of your life. There is a Tolkien afterlife where you can go play like you're an orc or a hobbit or whatever, and play in that virtual reality, if you like. There's all kinds of universes for every kind of soul, and they all serve a purpose. Let's get back to the next topic. So that kind of covered snakes and snails. Jonahs and whales. What's up with that? Well, Jonahs and whales kind of evoke the whole idea of the bad guy and the good guy. Now, if you think back to all the fairy tales, all of your favorite movies and stuff like that, everyone has this concept of a bad guy, good guy thing. And this gets back to the therianthrope thing. If you can paint through culture a narrative that demonizes one group and mobilizes another group to attack them. And this has been happening and has contributed to these extinction events. Okay, every one of these extinction events, no matter how old, millions and millions of years ago, served a purpose of resetting the experiment, which is, as I've told you, this experiment is about a better government for souls, not about having the best outcomes for every individual incarnation. It's not about this one life. It's about the history of your soul, the opportunity all souls will have. And so there have been many extinction events, and these physical components of them, cyclical components, asteroids hitting or exploding, solar cycles causing major flares that wipe out technology and so forth, like we may be about to experience with, maybe the worst Carrington type event that we've had since the Carrington event, which wiped out pretty much all telegraph, was the technology of the age, wiped out all telegraph and electricity in an age where that was just starting to take off, so not a lot of damage was done. You can imagine what kind of damage would be done now. These cyclical events are going to happen. They are kind of coded into where we are in the solar system, where we are in star cluster. We're actually in the Sirius star cluster. The Sirius system is like our pole that we revolve around. Kind of like we know that we're in the Milky Way and it has a center that we're on one of the spiral arms. Well, we're actually in a smaller system that involves a Sirius system. That's just starting to come out from scientists like Randall Carlson is one of the first talking about that. It will become better and better known as we gather more information from the James Webb Space Telescope, which is exposing a lot of very interesting new science. At any rate, we've got to stop letting the adversary divide us. If you want humanity to survive, and like I said, it really doesn't matter from a spiritual standpoint, it's going to affect a lot of souls, yes. If we have another world war, if we have worldwide famine, if we have a new improved virus that kills 90% of the population, like we've heard that they've been developing in China. At least there's one that they've developed that they've actually publicly announced kills 90% of the humanized mice it's been tried on. That just came out in mainstream news within the last few weeks, but it's actually been known to people that really follow China, follow the independent news since summertime. And, this is another proof that we're getting pretty close to some major event, something big happening. I don't know exactly what it is, because there's a lot of moving parts, a lot of arcs within arcs, grails within grails. Now, let's maybe go back to that topic for a little bit. What is the Ark of the Covenant? Where does that come into today's thing? We kind of tied to get today's goings on with the Ark of Noah and the idea that, yes, the genomes of all the species on Earth will be preserved and can be reconstructed by folks that have the right technology. This is stuff that's been done before. That's how this planet was repopulated selectively so quickly after previous destruction events. And why it happened so slowly after others. These are the problems that evolutionists, the Darwinian camp, struggle with, because they don't have all the missing links they need to make a consistent picture of natural selection evolution. And I'm not saying natural selection doesn't happen. It does. It's a very active part of terraforming worlds. There are some species that terraform that are very patient. They don't want to just get in and exploit. That's actually something I wanted to talk about that relates to the Therianthrope collapse, if you will. At this time when the Therianthropes were active, which was early Atlantean civilization, before actually this planet kind of became dominated by humanoid forms. That was all back then, and the legends we have of Therianthropes are from pre-Diluvian memory. That's why you see in Egyptian mythology all sorts of Therianthropes, and then in other civilizations you may only see one. You see in the Assyrian Empire, they're huge winged bulls. That was a kind of Therianthrope that did exist and was kind of the species of Therianthrope that was the god powers of the city-states of that part of the world at a certain time in this pre-Diluvian era. And some of those statues are copies or even come from that era, are as old as the Sphinx. The Sphinx itself comes from that era when a Therianthrope species was in charge of the Egypt area where the main Stargate was. Other of these Therianthropes were part fish, the Oannes character, or part bird, or mixed species, Quetzalcoatl of the New World, etc. So there are traces of this in all mythologies, and it all ties back to the fact that these species were selectively targeted for basically through kind of the same thing that we're doing now of selective demonization through culture of folks that are different. And I mean, you've seen, if you've lived for as long as I have, you've seen an era where everybody hated communists and gays to everybody embraced communists and gays, and anything you want to do goes. And old white guys who are a little bit conservative or who question the mainstream narrative are now the bad guys and the ones that must be exterminated or re-educated, according to Hillary Clinton. This is the kind of nonsense that's been going on for a long, long time on this planet, and it needs to stop if you want humanity to survive and keep thriving on this planet. We got to just say no. We got to tell these people that are trying to divide us and separate us and control our minds, pull us into the latest hive mind cult, which has actually a lot of different pulls, different parts of the world, different cults. If you are reacting to other people like a Pavlov dog, Pavlov attack dog, where the moment you hear Donald Trump, the moment you hear Israel, the moment you hear Hamas, Palestine, you see? They're separating us. They're dividing us. Now there are bad guys, definitely. They're the ones that are creating this response. And it's been going on. It's been going on for a long time. Ever since, well, since the beginning of culture, but it has been accelerating since the invention of mass media, especially television. But movies started this process. And now with streaming media and social media, it's got even worse. This is mind manipulation. This is programming. Every bit of content on Netflix, Amazon Prime, HBO, etc., is programming. They are more interested in making you see something with commercial or political value than they are interested in making money. If you think Hollywood is about making money, you don't know anything about the movie business. Most movies lose money. They still get funded because it's about programming. And especially if you have exclusive access to people's eyeballs through a network, through social media, through a big distributor like Netflix or HBO, Amazon Prime, etc., that programming is more valuable because you get more eyeballs. And the content creators, the ones who decide what gets made, they don't give a shit. They just want to make more money. They just play in the game because they're mostly middle management that, only sees one level above and one level below and doesn't realize that what they're doing is supporting huge evils of programming that have been gradually building more and more divisions between humans, just like in the past they built divisions between extraterrestrial species. And that's one of the big reasons why they've been so reluctant. The folks who know what's going on with visitors from outer space or other dimensions, they're afraid that if we know about these other species, about these visitors, about what's really going on here, that people will freak out and they'll start attacking these friends, potential friends, but also possible enemies. And there are enemies in every camp because, as I told you, the real adversary are hive minds. They want to destroy chosen species because that's the program that they were given for day 7, to put pressure on chosen species so that we would fully test this system of government for souls till we had enough universes, enough specialties of what people can do in their spiritual incarnations, that we had a good place for all souls to land, or good enough to release this program, this new idea from the test lab that it's been stuck in, which is a series of stacking doll experiments. Let's see, I think I've got a slide for that I can show you that I haven't used in a little while. Yeah. So, basically, we're in a stacking doll nested bunch of experiments. The multiverse is like the highest level that contains everything else. This is the whole lab of all creation, or at least what God is aware of. Maybe some other God has their own multiverse that God's not aware of. It doesn't interact with us in any known way. So until we find that happening, we don't need to worry about it. Within the multiverse are many universes, and that number is growing and expanding. And the universes themselves are growing and expanding because they're made up of galaxies, and galaxies can come into existence through spiritual phenomena. It's not as easy anymore. Now you've got to gather together gas clouds and form stars and et cetera, but it can still be done. And there are parts of our universe that are still operating on older versions of the laws. That's why we are getting so much strange stuff from the James Webb Space Telescope that we didn't expect from the early universe, because we are observing times when the laws were very different than they are now. You could form things more quickly because the laws were not well set. You could, with your mind as a god, pull together a star in much less time and have it evolve much more quickly than it does now, because the laws have changed. But they are changing in an organized fashion in smaller and smaller test tubes. So within galaxies, we've got star clusters that are kind of like mini galaxies where experiments can happen relatively isolated from the rest of the galaxy. Then we have star systems. This is another level of conducting experiments. The Gaia experiment is around our star system, the Sol star system, and has 12 planetary bodies that have contributed to developing the final Gaia. Gaia 12 is Earth. Gaia 11 was the planet that was destroyed, where the asteroid belt is. The other planets in our system have been hosts to previous chosen species experiments, most of them related to elemental species, but some of them related to the forming of the first reptilians and the first, insect species, which is where most of the hive mind stuff comes from. At least the useful hive minds tend to be insects. There are hive minds of other varieties that basically are more troublesome galactically. When they get to be intelligent, insects can be a problem, but they pretty much just defend their own planets, kind of like Starship Troopers. So their hive minds aren't that dangerous. The more dangerous hive minds are hive-minded arachnids, 8-legged creatures, and we've talked about what the number of digits, the number of legs signifies in a creation. This is an important piece of understanding species. Okay, that's why we have 10 fingers, yet we have a 12 mixed with 10 base system that we use to describe everything, because you know what? The Elohim, the species of hominid that created the Therianthropes, was a 12-fingered species. They are a hominid hive mind, some of which are very, very friendly to us, some of which are adversarial. In fact, the major adversary, Lilith, her last incarnation was in this species, and that's why she can still manifest as human, but has the ability to shapeshift. This is where vampires and werewolves come from. These are real stories from our past. And there are people amongst us that have these abilities. Not all good, not all bad. Okay? But if we drop all the disguises, people are going to go crazy. It's going to be, this is why we had movies like Men in Black, preparing us for the possibility that we might have to deal with some very different species. This is why we've got people all excited and jazzed about being furries and stuff like that. And that's okay as long as they don't become tyrannical about it. If you start forcing people to use your pronouns, or else they go to jail, or else you get off scot-free for committing crimes, this is tyranny. This is the misuse of your identity. Okay, when you do that, you are committing the karmic sin of tyranny, becoming a tyrant or supporting tyranny by letting people get away with that. Okay, so You've got the planetary level within a star system. We talked about that, the 12 versions of Gaia, the 12 chosen species that have been part of this system's development. And then, again, within that, you've got chosen species. On a particular planet, different phases, you have different species that might be top dog at any given time. Now, there were times in our planet's history where sea species were the top dogs. There were times when hive mind insects were the top dogs. This is where we get cats like Shiva and Kali. Have you noticed how they have so many hands? All these extra hands so they can hold extra swords? Well, one thing you'll notice is that some of the representations of Shiva or Kali have 2 sets of arms. Some of them have 3 sets of arms. Some of them have a myriad set of arms. Okay, this is covering up the fact that their true representation was as the intelligent Scorpio species, the spiders. Scorpio is, although it's thought of as a scorpion, this is the same family that contains spiders, contains lobsters, and so forth. It's 8-legged species that has hands, a certain number of hands, a certain number of feet, depending on how it's specialized as a species. The most intelligent ones were a hive-minded scorpion spider kind of species. They probably had both. This is where the Shelob character in The Lord of the Rings came from. That's what inspired that. That's why we have a fear of spiders. At any rate, that's one of the species that was dominant on this planet at one time. One of the darker ones that was part of an oppressive era of this planet. There were others that still survive in the sea. There are much more intelligent species in the sea than dolphins and whales, although those give us evidence that there's much more going on down there than we are aware of. There are species that still thrive within the earth that have a lighter or a darker notion about their role in this game. Many of the previous chosen species lean towards, well, we like things the way they are. We don't want things to change. So we don't want humanity to become another God-level species and finish up their role in this experiment, especially if they don't understand that that role is going to benefit everyone spiritually. And that's the problem, is you've got so many souls that are newborn NPC souls that don't understand that the soul goes on. This is why there's so many people that don't believe in reincarnation, don't believe in karma, because they've never seen it in operation. And that's just a sad fact about NPCs. They're kind of stupid. And they're naturally stupid because they haven't had those experiences. A newborn soul generated by Borg can replace any soul that's been assimilated before. So that's how NPCs are generated, to fit whatever is necessary. So you can generate an NPC version of Albert Einstein, of God, of any soul, and it will, to most others, look and act the same, but it will have a very narrow view of what its role is. That's the nature of an NPC. And most of the souls that are still here in the Gaia experiment are NPCs. Not only human incarnated souls, but most of the alien souls I'm just doing my job. That's how they think. That's NPC thinking. I don't want to get involved here. I'll just do the safe thing. How many of you think like that? Well, we all think like that in certain circumstances, because in some dimensions, in some, directions of perception, we are like an NPC because we haven't experienced that perspective before. That's why we need reincarnation and karma. It takes a lot of different perspectives of seeing things to actually understand in a deep way what is good, what is evil, what you should do, what you shouldn't do, what's going to cause a problem, what's not going to cause a problem. Even God has that issue. Okay, as we get to smaller and smaller test tubes, a certain race might be the chosen one, and they will have domination over a planet, over an experiment, over others, and that will seem unfair to the others. People within a race, there have been many chosen people in this experiment. Not just the Jews, not the Hebrews, not the Palestinians, not any one group, but all of them have had that title at one point or another, or some previous incarnation of them. And peoples will come together and they will meld. And actually, to generate a real Messiah, you have to bring together all of these past bloodlines into one. And that's the game that we've been playing. People don't understand what creates a messianic bloodline. All of the incredibly successful and miraculously successful people of the past have been part of these messianic bloodlines. They didn't finish the experiment, but they moved it forward. Folks like Alexander the Great was a conquering Messiah. His function, his Messiah mission, was to spread Greek philosophy and culture and science to the Eastern world. That's what was accomplished in his short lifetime, and set up this next period, which was the period that resulted in the fusion of ideas, religious ideas, that generated pretty much all the world's major religions that survived into modern times, which didn't include polytheistic religions, did they? Everything kind of shifted towards monotheism or atheism. Essentially, Buddhism is more of an atheist cult than anything else. Buddhists tend not to pay any attention to gods and goddesses. They think it's all about me, my own enlightenment. It's a very selfish religion, ultimately. At least many sects of it are very selfish and self-centered, and that's why I'm not that fond of Buddhism, especially, or of the idea of the one cosmic one, because I know that's a hive mind agenda. It's not good for you. You can choose it if you want, but it's like a cop-out. Giving up your individuality, giving up yourself, trying to kill your ego, that's pretty stupid. If you can't love yourself, you're a pretty sad soul, aren't you? Yeah, so different peoples. There have been chosen people that we are only vaguely aware of, but keep coming back. Like the people of Ireland, Scotland. Some very, very special chosen people, because they have a heritage of a time when what was preserved of the good rested with those people, and the adversary very nearly wiped out our species. This is the period of the wandering of God. in human form, in semi-human form. This is the time when God was Odin, one-eyed Odin, wandering around among people looking for good men. And this actually is the same basic structure of the Celtic religion, which is all but gone, except in vague bits and pieces of Gaelic folklore. Yeah, a lot of chosen species, and they all have to come together to generate a new messianic bloodline. When these bloodlines come together, sometimes it causes a golden age. The golden age of Elizabethan England, the golden age of Enlightenment France, the golden age of Renaissance in Italy, the golden age of Spain, of exploration and conquest, the golden age of the Maya, the Aztecs. All of these civilizations had their own messiahs. Not capital M messiahs. Maybe it was an incarnation of God, but not a fully awakened one. And in the process, a lot of little messiahs did their own thing. Conquering messiahs were responsible for the mixing of peoples, the changing of governments that were necessary for the plan to succeed. Philosophical messiahs like Socrates were responsible for creating systems of thinking that were necessary for humanity to eventually produce a fully awakened real Messiah, capital M. What happened? What do you need to have a real Messiah? You have to have somebody who completely gets the plan of all creation. Oh, okay, I see how this had to have happened because it is logical. It is what a spiritual scientist would come up with if they had all the time in the world for trial and error. And in fact, there have been many Messiah candidates that sort of got pieces of this. That's why we're all kind of gravitating towards some of the same ideas, like, gee, I think consciousness is fundamental to everything, not matter and energy. Many people are gravitating toward that idea. They are being corrupted, though, by the adversary. The adversary takes those people and starts feeding them with temptations to become more famous, to popularize their ideas. And one of the great ways to popularize your idea is to cast it in the framework of pantheism. We're all God, just experiencing our own individual problems. And when you die, you're going to get to be God again. How many numby-gumby religions, how many numby-gumby scientists and spiritualists and so forth are preaching that nonsense? Oh, it feels really good. Oh, I'm part of God. Oh, I don't have to accept responsibility for all the bad that I did here because I can't control all that, and it's just something God wanted to experience. So I can do all the sinning and stuff I want. Oh God, it is so frigging narcissistic. And yet that's what's popular. And that's what has corrupted so many Messiah candidates. So many that have gotten a piece of the message and they used it to get famous. Oh, I'm going to immediately write a book. And I went through the same temptation, so I know what it's like. My first book, in its early versions, was very narcissistic, very much influenced by this cosmic oneness nonsense. But I kept rewriting it until it reflected the truth. Second book was a collection of essays and short stories and poems that didn't really fit in any book, but were kind of documenting my thought process going through my spiritual awakening to get to the point where I'm giving my podcast now. It's not popular. It's funny because I don't know if this is part of the shadow banning effect or what, but my subscriptions will go up like 5 or 6, and then they'll go down like 2 or 3, and up 5 or 6, down 2 or 3, and one episode will get popular enough to get several hundred views, and then I'll get like 2 or 3 views or 25 views on the next one. It's just totally random. And I think it's because I challenge people. I mean, I've had a strike on my channel and get copyright warnings all the time, even though I only use material that has been released in an unlocked recording version on archive.org. Now, I don't know. Maybe what I'm teaching is not something that many people are meant to learn till later. Who knows? At least I hope there's going to be a later for folks to learn this, because looking back at the event, whatever happens, whatever comes out of this event we're going through, if we're going to be re-enslaved by our own species or another species, or destroyed by another cataclysm, to be reconstituted on another world by somebody who was building an ark to start a zoo. There's species out there that do that. I mean, they're archivists. Archivists. Isn't that interesting that archive starts with ark? This is all tied together. There are so many connections that lead to what I'm talking about. It's just phenomenal. And if you keep looking, you'll eventually start seeing the things that I do. Till then, you're going to be challenged. You're going to be in a lot of fear and hate. And you will have another chance. And you have the opportunity to guide those chances, to make your own ark, to make your own grail. It's not easy. It's not just like, okay, mail order grail for $19.95, I get to be a furry messiah. To demand other people call you by your chosen pronouns. That's nonsense. That's tyrannical nonsense. They can call you whatever they want to because you look male or you look female or you look like, I don't know, it. I'm going to start calling the ones I can't tell Cousin It. It looks like a really you look. In karma. Okay, I think I might have covered what I wanted to cover today. Let's see if I missed anything. Well, good fairy tales. I think I've kind of gotten you the world's religions, the world's popular religions, are fairy tales, simplistic stories for children to make them feel good, to make them feel like part of a community, to make them feel safe and happy and empowered and enabled. Cult Marxism, to hating others that don't support their particular fantasy. Okay? You don't get to be Chicken Little and go around saying the sky is falling. and not be challenged by other people that say, okay, prove it. I don't see the sky falling. What's your evidence? Mr. Climate Change Sky is Falling person. And I will show variable naturally than what you're talking about happening with human effects. And in fact, most of the evidence we have about variations in CO2 in the atmosphere indicate that the CO2 levels tend to equal out because CO2 more likely because of deforestation, which is a result of globalization, than because of our cars, which are quite efficient, have catalytic converters. They don't put out a lot of pollution anymore, not a lot of bad pollution. The dangerous products, not of best designed combustion engine cars. Okay? And we could do so much more with a combustion engine. The EVs that they tell you are so wonderful, the battery technology right now is environmental damage and manufacturing standpoint, and from the standpoint of, well, you got to charge these things and you need electricity for charging, and the biggest consumer of electricity, China, still gets over 65% of their energy from coal-fired plants, the most polluting and form who are fault that global warming's happening, rather than these assholes flying around on their Learjets emitting all sorts of bad stuff that comes out of jet engines, especially the creating the contrails and all this stuff. There's some really dark, evil people out there, but if you know what's really going on, it's kind of fun because you know that they're heading for a fall. They're going to die one day. They're not going to be able to transfer their consciousness to an AI and get to live. Thinks he's going to souls. So much that they've been replaced and they're already burning in hell somewhere. And the replacement is here just finishing putting pressure on purgatory is all about. It's testing. If you're still being tested, if you're a conscious soul and you know that something's not right here, something that you might be able to do something about, you're one of the few that's left that's still not an NPC. And it's going to be really hard for you until you are being tested. That you're going to have another chance if you play the game right. If you understand how karma works and you don't become a tyrant. That's what they're pushing you to do. That's why they keep trying Palestine war. Get you excited about Russia-Ukraine. Get you excited about Democrat versus Republican, the new civil war in the United States. Uh, Actually, I think the people in China have it figured out the best. They're just lying flat. I'm just not going to play the game, which is kind of the Buddhist way of dealing with things. Is best. Yes, there will be martyrs. There will be people that are hurt. There will be people that are. Enough people will see it and say, you know what? I cannot support this anymore. My country is committing genocide. Chinese, my country is enslaving its people with laws like the Patriot Act. Americans, and I talked about that. I did a whole segment on it. It is the most ever pushed through by the Uniparty. And if you don't think it's going to affect you, you are a fucking idiot. Sorry, my French, but it is true. It takes away every fundamental right the Constitution guarantees to. Hire a lawyer can make your life pure hell through the Patriot Act. And I've seen it done to me twice. So don't tell me I'm full of shit. Don't tell me I'm a conspiracy theorist. I have personal experience thereof. At any rate, I think it's about time to wrap this one up. Like, share, subscribe. If you have any questions, some direction you want to focus in on one piece of the puzzle, I'll do the best I can. I'm not an expert in everything, but I have, I believe, the biggest picture view of what's going on right now of anyone on this planet in a human meat sack. And I would challenge come on my show. Tell me what an idiot I am. I don't mind. I will refute and debate with any comers. I'm tired of being treated like I don't exist. I do exist. And for as long as I do exist, I'm going to keep publishing this podcast. Okay? You know, I've mentioned it several times. The brief history of the multiverse. I think I could write it all right now, but it's just like I haven't felt the impetus to do it. I like these podcasts better because I feel like I'm sharing with somebody instead of just, knitting a sweater of the multiverse. Great. Like, share, subscribe. We'll see you next time on the Honest Hour. Happy Karma.